Hello and welcome to this Oda episode of the Eternal Law. On the last Oda episode we saw the opening of the war with the Hatano, with all of the Oda forces storming up and capturing one of the enemy provinces. Then far over to the east, General Kiyonori moved up against the Honma and captured the province of Echigo. However, this triggered a realm divide, suddenly pitting Oda against all of Japan in an all versus one war. Resultantly, the Hatakeyama attacked Yamato province with huge armies, the first of which was defeated in a sally battle in which the Oda defenders came out and defended a ridge using a spear wall against the enemy's massed katana samurai. Following this, there was a battle against our former allies and vassals, the Tokugawa, out to sea. This battle is still ongoing, the Tokugawa constantly filling their ranks back up with reinforcements, and the last we saw of it, the Oda fleet was beginning to burn and the sailors were abandoning their ships. Let's see how it goes from there. The age of war is over. This is now the age of betrayal. Every man and woman in the land wonders which side they should take. Thinking nothing of clan loyalty, now edicts of extermination are being flung from the deceited tower of the imperial palace. But we soldiers have not the leisure of variable loyalty. The Hattori army hovers at our castle gates, waiting only for the order to attack. When they do, there is not a man in my army who will not die to stop them, whatever the Shogun says. So we're back in that naval battle, Oda versus Tokugawa. The Tokugawa betrayers, of course, attacking the Oda main force at sea with their own. The Tokugawa force is mainly boarding ships, and so the Oda ships have been trying to keep their distance and use their archers to whittle down the enemy's crew members. However, the enemy are starting to succeed in their boarding actions at around this point in the battle. You can see here the enemy Sengoku Bune, the crew of which are jumping onto our medium Bune and cutting down everyone on the deck. However, you can also see on the enemy Sengoku Bune deck that we've given them a fair number of casualties before they could board, so things aren't so bad. Now the battle ended up coming into an almost stagnant state, where all the ships were basically just chasing each other around, which was to my advantage because my archers were gradually picking off their crew during these chase sequences. The enemy kept reinforcing and replacing all the ships that they lost, which meant that we were never really gaining an advantage, and our crews were gradually being ground down by the ongoing fighting, so things weren't looking too good at this stage. However, now we rejoined the battle a little bit later, and what actually happened was that there were so many surrendered or destroyed ships littering the sea where this combat was happening that a lot of the enemy Sengoku Bune got stuck in position, like this one here. You can see the ships can't move. This allowed me to surround them with my remaining ships, and the few surviving archers I had left could very slowly start picking off the crew. Like around this stage, I think my crews were down to only 25% strength on average across the ships. So we had only a few archers left to actually engage with the enemy, but they were locked in position. They couldn't get around us, or as in this case their crew is too small to actually continue sailing. So now we're coming to the end of the battle. You can see there's only one ship left. All of their crew were killed by archers and a very late boarding action, resulting in a costly victory. We have won the battlefield. However, we took huge losses in the process. We only lost one of our ships, but the rest of the ships lost almost all of their crew, so they're going to be unusable from now on. This is mirrored in the battle results screen as we see here. We actually lost two ships. One of them was abandoned because their crew became too small. We did capture a whole load of empty enemy ships. However, we don't have the crew to actually do anything with them, so we're going to have to get them back to port and find some more crewmen for them if we actually want to use them. Now the Tokugawa turn continues, and one of the Tokugawa main forces from Kai storms up into North Shinano and attacks the castle. Kiyonori was rushing back to North Shinano to defend against such an invasion. However, he didn't get there in time, which means we're going to have to allow the Tokugawa to take this castle for now. I decided to do the battle by auto-resolve because I just couldn't really be bothered to do it myself, even though I could have given the enemy a few more casualties if I had. However, those casualties would likely be healed anyway by the time I arrived, so I thought it wasn't really worth it. So now we're moving into the Hattori turn, another vassal that has decided to betray us. The Hattori are moving reinforcements to come and join their main group up here in Wakasa, and they decide to engage the castle in Wakasa with a siege assault. However, Nobunaga's army, who had fallen back from the main front with the Hatano, springs out of the forest and is able to come to the castle with its aid. However, he is facing off against 3 Hattori armies, so he's going to have a really hard time breaking through them. He has to get to the defenders inside the castle before they're destroyed by the enemy's overwhelming numbers, and then try and hold off the rest of the enemy. Let's head into the battle and see how that goes. So the battle begins. You can see the Oda forces arrayed inside the castle are very sparse, far fewer than are required to defend a castle of this size. And at first, the attacking forces are sparse too. We see just a few groups of samurai moving up towards the castle from various different angles. Here's some onobushi here, 2 units of onobushi fielded by the enemy. Here's Nobunaga's army coming onto the field, about as far away from the battlefront as it could possibly be. It was a very bad place for Nobunaga to be entering the battlefield, unfortunately. And if we jump right over to the other side of the map, we can see the enemy armies that are storming onto the field. Now, the entire enemy army doesn't actually fit on the map. The enemy is only allowed to field 40 units at a time, so some of the enemy troops are actually still outside the battlefield and will come to join the fight later on. So as Nobunaga's army approached the castle, the enemy started diverting a few troops to come and engage with his forces. Now, I only noticed this at a very late stage, so you can see I had to do a very bungled charge to come and try and break through these forces he'd come to block me with. But you can see it's still enough, because I have so many men here that the sheer weight of their charge is pushing into these elite onobushi and killing them, even with Ashigaru troops doing the fighting. So it actually went a little bit better than I thought it would. You can see more enemy units coming in here, so I need to break up my big blob of formation that I have here and form some sort of actual battle line. The enemy is starting to commit more and more regiments to stopping me getting to the castle. You can see I'm rushing out katana samurai from inside my front lines as long yari ashigaru to engage with these enemy taichi samurai, who are basically an elite form of katana samurai, though you can see the Oda men still do a good job at cutting them down. Now the rest of the Hattori main force kind of begins to realize what's going on, and they redeploy all of their vast cavalry to go and attack the Oda forces outside the castle and stop them getting inside. At the same time, all of their frontline infantry has already breached the castle and are getting in. We do have Bo Ashigaru up on the inner sanctum, who are managing to cut down a few of them, but the enemy's formations are so loose that arrows aren't going to do very much damage against them. Now, over on the west side, the enemy have already breached the inner sanctum and are now fighting with the few defenders that are inside. So within just a few minutes of starting the battle, all of the inner defenders have been occupied. This means any more enemy units that come up are going to have a very easy time, going to be able to outflank any defenders we do have, or ignore them completely if they wish. The enemies on Onobushi are managing to get inside the inner sanctum here. They're finding some Yari Ashigaru to try and do the defense. Now, those Yari Ashigaru are going to have a hard time against those Onobushi, because the Onobushi are far more skilled. However, I do have a numerical advantage, so I can hold them off at least for a while. Back outside the castle, you can see that the Oda army is locked down. It's being surrounded by cavalry, and we're really trying here to break out by deploying spears along the outside of the battle line. You can see I used a few grenades to clear up a certain sector of the battlefield, but I can stop them throwing those grenades because we're going to get loads of friendly fire all bunched together here. So the objective now is to just break out of this encirclement, get rid of these cavalry using all my spearmen, and try and get to the castle in time. Back inside the castle, the enemy's samurai from their reinforcement armies have reached the inner sanctum. Here we see the enemy's no Daichi samurai going up against some Yari Ashigaru, an engagement which is going to go very heavily in the favour of the Hattori. And just to make things worse, look how many reinforcements they have swarming into the inner sanctum from all sides. So it's bad news for the troops trying to defend the Tenshu. The good news is that outside, Nobunaga's army has destroyed all of the Hattori forces engaged against it. Last news from the north was that the band of Hattori samurai we saw last month was heading to Wakasa. There's been no word from my sons or General Muneyori. For all we know, the fate of the Oda has already been decided. Those shogunate armies will storm us here in Umi any day. And now they say the traitors are being turned away from Shinano by order of the Tokugawa. General Kiyanori is surely lost. A decade of nation building ends in a single bloody crush. So now Nobunaga's forces are on the move, but of course to do any good, they need to reach the castle interior before the defenders are defeated. You can see they're currently having quite a hard time. These Yari Ashigaru holding out against countless Hattori samurai who seem to be coming in unlimited numbers. Back here, the Bow Ashigaru had been defending the walls and now being engaged with some of the enemy's Ashigaru units. So even our super weak Bow Ashigaru reserve is now being taken up, and you can see the enemy have more and more reinforcements pouring onto the field from outside the map. Tons of extra samurai and some cavalry marauding around back there as well. So it's bad news. Nobunaga's force has been slightly delayed by more enemy cavalry piling into their ranks, but you can see those cavalry are just being churned up by the wall of spears they're facing, so it's not going to be too much of a delay. Inside the castle, you can see the number of enemy troops has swelled to an indefeatable number. Archers are firing across the flat plain into the huge pile of enemy troops, but it's not going to do anything because they're about to break through. There's only a single line of Oda troops left on that section. And there's a lot of Yari samurai left around the gate area, but that's not going to prevent the enemy getting to the Tenshu. You can see I have Yari Ashigaru, who have just come over from the east side of the castle, the west side of the castle, sorry, where they finished defeating the enemies on Ibushi. They had a little rest on the Tenshu capture point, and they're now racing forward in order to plug the gap that has just opened up. The enemy, I think, just defeated the last Oda men on this side of the castle. You can see the enemy now charging out towards the Tenshu. And so these Ashigaru are going to simply delay them. It's very unlikely they'll kill any of the enemy troops, but the delay is useful at this stage because Nobunaga's samurai are getting closer and closer to the castle interior. We just need to buy them some more time.
The men are fatigued, my lord, and some must rest.
You can see Nobunaga himself has already arrived in the centre to rally the troops. Here's his army outside. Some of it is being delayed. They couldn't reach the gatehouse up to the centre because some of the enemy reinforcements who were heading to the centre diverted themselves to come and engage with the Katana samurai. You can see this enemy no Daichi samurai are cutting through the Oda men with their long blades, quite sneaky of them. However, we have a distinct numerical advantage and we're starting to surround them here as well. So locally we actually have a very big advantage in this area. You can see I sent more troops around the other side, to the west side of the castle, to go into the other gatehouse, and they're going in unobstructed, so they're going to be inside the inner sanctum very soon. Nobunaga himself is currently defending the Tenshu capture point, but you can see he is going to be in trouble very soon. I don't see any of those Ashigaru I sent out to stop the enemy still alive. I think they were all defeated,
Has perished, my lord.
as the announcer confirms, and the enemy storms forward towards the Tenshu capture point, ignoring my Bow Ashigaru, going straight for Nobunaga. Nobunaga is pretty much forced to retreat from this situation because there's no way he can survive. The enemy are deploying spears against him, but him and his guards run away. A few of the guards take casualties, unfortunately. And so now the enemy pretty much have the Tenshu capture point, so it's a race. Can I get troops there fast enough to stop them capturing it? You can see that the south gate has been blocked by enemy samurai, so I can't get men in. You can see I'm throwing grenades onto the Tenshu capture point to try and clear the enemy off, but they're just too thickly formed up on it. I can't get inside. You can see Nobunaga there made a last-ditch effort to get to the Tenshu capture point. He actually succeeded by first drawing off some of the enemy troops. However, it was too late. The countdown timer was already over. So it's a victory for the Hattori forces. A costly victory for them, but a victory nonetheless. This means that they're going to have Wakasa Castle, and all of the defenders inside the castle are pretty much dead. Nobunaga's army, much of it is still alive, but it's still in trouble. Let's head back to the strategy map. It is a valiant defeat. You can see the entire castle garrison was killed there, unfortunately. The good news is that a very large number of the Hattori troops have been killed, and if you look at Nobunaga's army here, a lot of it's still alive. More than half of the troops remain, so he's in okay shape. Nobunaga falls back from the siege position, but some of the Hattori troops decide to chase him, perhaps thinking that he was going to a full rout. But of course Nobunaga simply turns to face them, and now we actually have quite an advantage because the enemy lost so many men in that siege assault that the army they've sent against us is really depleted, and the units it does have left are all not at full strength. So let's see what we can do with these Hattori scum. The enemy think themselves demons, melting the snow with their gaze and sending us running in fear of the wrath of hell. But all told, they shake in fear of the Oda men they faced in battle just 5 sleepless nights ago. Now it is time, brothers, to take our chance to restore the peace we had built and rekindle the last hope of avoiding the fall into endless war that the Shogun so desires. Stake your spears into the snow, mark the ranges with arrows, and prepare to slaughter the enemy! And so, on the snowy plains west of Wakasa, the Hattori army is still pursuing the Oda forces. You can see they're currently in full charge because they've obviously spotted the Oda army formed up just ahead of them. If we zoom forwards, we can see that protected by a mountain on the right flank is the Oda formation. Most of it is hidden in a small copse here. Archers at the front, spears in the middle, heavy infantry at the back, and Nobunaga bringing up the rear, looking over his formation and waiting to entrap Hattori in this little ambush point. First, the Hattori send their subordinate general around their left flank. I don't know what they were trying to do, but they discover all of our hidden units sitting here on the flank, a huge formation which they can't possibly get through, and they understandably run away. Now that they kind of realize that there are units over there, they start diverting their charge and breaking up their own formation by charging across the face of the other charging units. But they've really committed to the fight, and you can see the subordinate general, perhaps not wishing to go back to his own lines for whatever reason, decides to come into the center of the Oda formation and see what he can do. He moves up through the trees, a few of his men take arrows, he comes up to our barrier, the barrier doesn't stop him for some reason, and he manages to get inside. However, I pull the archers back behind the spear wall, and his guards foolhardily rush into the spears. All of the guards are killed immediately, and the general himself is forced to fight on with these spear units. He's not going to last long in this situation. Meanwhile, the rest of the Hattori army is still moving up through the trees and discovering this huge ambush in front of them. But I guess it was too late because they just keep charging on. Now you can see here the screens I'd set up. I hoped it would break up the enemy charge, but the enemy just kind of phased through the screens, so that plan didn't work. However, the backup plan worked of having them just charge into the spear wall, and this does break up their charge. You can see the spears jabbing out, slowly pushing the enemy formation back, keeping them a few meters away from the Oda line so they just can't do any damage to us, locking them in position and very slowly killing them. Now around on our right flank, you can see I folded into the enemy center, and I'm doing a similar strategy using spear walls to push them back. I'm also at this time beginning to move up heavy infantry to sneak through the spear wall and start killing enemies. A similar deal is happening on our left flank. Mainly I'm charging all the hidden reserve Yari Samurai I had on my rear left to come and engage with the enemy's right flank. Now in here you can see I'm crushing my Samurai into this fight. We're really pushing the enemy back here. The enemy's center has almost been completely destroyed because some of their units have fallen back. This is because I was trying to rear flank them with some Yari Samurai who've now successfully distracted the enemy. Now you can see down here on the left I'm rushing my Katana ninjas out of the melee because I wanted to show you what exactly is happening when all those explosions go up on the battlefield. So I wanted to show you those grenades actually being put to use. There they go. And you can see the grenades just decimate the area they're thrown at. There are some Oda Yari Samurai in here as well, so we're getting some friendly fire from these grenades. I guess I targeted them poorly. But you can see the whole area is just riddled with craters, and the enemy formation is completely broken up, and a whole bunch of their troops are killed. You can see I gave them a second volley there. Devastating for those enemy troops. And I believe the enemy start to rout in this area after that second volley of explosions. You can see that the enemy's primary general tried to break through the center for who knows what reason and failed, and now all the remaining enemy troops on their right flank decide to just run, realizing that the center and left flank have fallen. And you see those that tried to stand their ground are immediately run down by the Oda pursuers. It's a decisive victory for the Oda forces after their valiant defeat against the Hattori. So we've taken a bit of revenge, we've killed 2 Hattori officers, and we've defeated a large number of their remaining troops. This means we can possibly go and take Wakasa back. We're going to have to head back to the strategy map to see exactly what the situation is. So in this decisive victory we killed over 1,000 Hattori troops with just a couple of hundred Oda losses, a very nice kill to death ratio, and we've completely destroyed that Hattori army there. So now the Hattori turn continues, and their next move is to send out a large naval force to attack the Oda navy, which is just waiting just off the Tokugawa lands. This Oda navy is actually fairly strong, but it's much smaller than the enemy force, and you can see the enemy force has heavy bunes amongst it, which could probably just completely destroy my medium bunes, and the rest of my force is just boka boyas. So I thought I'd actually be in trouble here. I decided to retreat. However, my boats decided not to retreat very far, which is very unfortunate because they retreat right into 2 more Tokugawa navies, and then the Hattori navy pursues, basically meaning I had no chance in that battle. So I decided to auto-resolve it, and we were royally routed. However, now for some good news. An Amako army marches up into the ambush site I'd prepared. So Takayama and Nobuyuki are going to be storming out against this enemy force. You can see we have a massive force advantage on the balance bar, so I decided I'd just auto-resolve this fight because it was probably going to go in our way. Wouldn't be too much of an exciting battle to see. It's a decisive victory. The entire Amako army was completely crushed for very small Oda losses, so this is very good news from the Auto Resolve. And you can see a statue was erected in honor of this victory by the local people. Very nice. However, 2 more Amako armies appeared to replace the one we just defeated, so things aren't so good after all. And then we have bad news. The remaining Hatano forces, who are sitting off in those forests over there, come and attack Takayama's army. And now this allows the 2 Amako armies that just moved up to provide reinforcements, forcing Takayama to retreat because he wouldn't be able to fight the battle properly. And then the same thing happens to Nobuyuki. So both of our armies have been dispersed from the castle, and Nobuyuki's has been put into territory of winter attrition. So overall, the Hatano's tiny force actually did a lot of damage to the Oda defenses there. Now you can see the Hatakeyama are continuing their campaign against Yamato. Now they've got double the amount of troops they had before, and we have fewer troops, so it's pretty much bad news. You can see the balance bar is very much not in our favour here. It looks like the Oda army at Yamato is going to face destruction. Look how many ninjas they have in their army. They have hundreds and hundreds of katana ninjas who are going to be very good at storming castle walls. Bad news for the Oda men. Peace is but a dream, from which all must awake. War is the way of the risen sun, the truth to all delusions of the night. All it takes to exceed the expectations of great Bushimonten is to realize this truth. But then we can go further. We can hone our skill, devoting our energy to the only true pursuit of man. In each flashing blade, the secret story of this world is hidden. In each drop of blood, there is wisdom absorbed from millennia of adventure. May all who fight find their path, be it life or death. Now I did actually fight that battle on the battlefield, and I do have footage of it, but it wasn't very strategically interesting since you're at such a disadvantage. But I did manage a valiant defeat. We killed about as many enemy troops as we lost, which, considering the force disadvantage, was actually quite good. Much better than the auto resolve would have given, that's for sure. So our key province of Yamato has now fallen to the Hatakeyama, and they still have about 1 stack's worth of troops to defend it, so we're not going to be getting it back anytime soon. Looks like the Honma are up to no good, sending monks down and troops into Echigo there, but Echigo is a lost cause anyway, so perhaps it doesn't really matter so much. So as the turn ends, we get a very nice selection of alerts telling us that Wakasa and Yamato have fallen, and then telling us that all our armies have been destroyed. Very nice. We also get a message saying that one of our ninjas who is scouting the Hatano lands has been executed, and we get news that an uprising is about to begin in Echigo. But as I said, I don't really mind what happens in Echigo anymore because it's a lost cause. Here's the enemy Metsuke who defeated one of my ninjas. Very annoying, so we're going to have less intelligence on Kyoto and the remaining Hatano lands from now on. But you can see here that at Wakasa, the Hattori forces remaining in the castle aren't all that strong, and Nobunaga actually has a good chance of taking it back. We also have this situation with the Amako to deal with. We've got 2 armies, they've got 2 armies, we've got a castle. However, it's going to be a struggle for us to take them on, simply because our armies aren't particularly good, and these Amako armies are very experienced and full of elite samurai who we would actually struggle against. So I had to make decisions about what was going to happen on this battlefront, and I was thinking that Tango might have to be abandoned in order to preserve our defences and then just focus everything on Wakasa down where Nobunaga is. In Wakasa itself, you can see I decided to send Nobunaga against the castle and to begin laying siege. You can see our force is actually weaker than the defenders inside, however hopefully they won't notice and we can maintain a siege for a little bit. Back over there in North Shinano, we saw that the Tokugawa had taken it, and we can see they have a large unknown force inside, but I decided to just gamble that Kiyonori's force would be at least similarly strong and send it forward, and it was actually quite a good gamble because the enemy force was mostly cavalry, whereas Kiyonori's force is mostly long spearmen, which means we would have an advantage in a battle. And I'm trying to give myself a bigger advantage by moving up my reinforcement group here. You can see I still don't have a distinct advantage, so I'd still probably take very large losses if I decided to do the assault now. So I decided to wait a bit and see what happened on the other battlefronts before I went ahead with that. You can see I'm also building up defences on these other possible battlefronts in case something starts, which I'm sure it will. Now back to the situation with the Hattori. You can see what I'm doing is I'm basically falling back from Tango. I'm rushing the armies that were facing off against the Amako back into Wakasa. The idea is that I want all 3 of my armies here to be supporting each other. Since the enemy appear to be using 2 large supporting armies, the only real way I can get a decisive advantage is to use 3. I also have another ninja in the area. Now one thing I could do with this ninja is sabotage these elite enemy armies so they can't move forward this turn. This would mean I'll be definitely safe against them, but something inside me kind of wanted them to move forward because I thought I can probably set up an ambush on the road between Tango and Wakasa and possibly take them out without too much trouble. So I decided to move my ninja back to just support these armies. Now Nobunaga actually had a look into assaulting Wakasa because now he's being reinforced by the extra large Oda army commanded by Nobuyuki, which means we have quite a large force advantage on the balance bar. So this pretty much allows me to auto-resolve the fight if I wanted to, and I decided that I would because I feel like it's going to give me favourable results. I feel like I have just enough balance for the game to decide it would be no problem for me to take this castle, and it seems like that is the case. We take moderate losses across all of the armies. Nobunaga's of course was already quite damaged, so it's more unfortunate for him to take more losses. Nobuyuki leveled up, which is good news, and we've taken the castle, which of course is good news in itself. So I'm going to start repairing the castle from the damage that was given to it during the auto-resolve conflict, and this basically means I can now more confidently set up an ambush in Wakasa for those Amako forces if they decided to move forward, and all of my armies here which have taken losses are going to start restoring their troops, which is good news indeed. Now I don't need all of these troops inside the castle because the castle itself is safe from assault for now, so I'm going to leave some guys as a garrison to keep public order and move the rest of Nobunaga's army up towards where Takayama is stationed to provide support in case Takayama is attacked during this turn. Basically this will give us an ironclad definitive defense in Wakasa for at least this turn, and we'll have to see what the Amako do about it, or what the Hatano do about it for that matter. You can see I was also actually trying to find some ambush points along this road, but there's only one ambush point, and that's where Nobuyuki is right now. So unfortunately I can't ambush the enemy with all of my armies. I'll have to draw them closer to Nobuyuki if I want to actually perform an ambush. So now, as I said I would, I've returned to the situation in North Shinano, and I'm thinking that I am going to assault the castle. I've also brought down some more men from Hida province. All of the garrison of Hida has come down to support Kinori in his assault and had quite a large advantage, and I decided I was going to try and get away with auto-resolving this one as well, because we're going to be here all day if I try and fight all these battles, and it's actually a decisive victory, so more good news from auto-resolving. This means North Shinano is back in our hands, a fantastic little bit of victory there, and it's actually a successful mission. I had a mission to defeat that Tokugawa army, and as a result I get +3 line of sight in all provinces for a while, which basically just means I can see more of what the enemy is up to, which has got to be good news. All the forces remaining around the castle I'm setting up in ambush positions because it seems pretty likely that more enemy forces are going to be attacking soon, perhaps the Tokugawa, perhaps the Yamanouchi. And so that area is now actually fairly secure, at least against medium scale enemy invasions. What I am worried about is the situation in Umi where Nobuhide is stationed, because he has only a small army defending him. You can see the shogunate forces just to the west could strike if they wanted to, and there are now Hatakeyama forces in the area that could do serious damage. So the Oda have seen mixed victory and defeat with this round divide, and there's still lots of flashpoints that could go off. We'll see what happens in the next Oda episode. That's all for this episode, but tune in to see the Takeda cautiously conquering next time on the Eternal Law.